Hey guys, welcome back. So let's go ahead and get started building our project. So we are going to need to have Python installed on our computer, and also we are going to need to have Node.js. So Python enables us to work with our Django backend, since Django is a Python framework, and Node.js gives us access to NPM. So we'll be using NPM to manage our project dependencies, including Next, and all the libraries that we need to have our Next.js front end to work. So be sure to have Node.js installed and to also have Python installed. So in this one, I'm going to be working on Windows, but if you're working on a Mac, the process is going to be similar. You might have to do things a bit differently. If there's something that is specific to macOS or Linux, I will be mentioning it before we continue. So I have a folder on my computer called projects. So over here, I'm going to create a new folder. So this is going to contain all our project code. So I'm going to call this campaign. So I'm going to call this campaign manager. So inside here, remember we are going to be having Django on the back end and Next.js on the front end. So we are going to have to maintain two different projects, the Next.js front end and the Django backend. So I'm going to create a folder for the front end. So new folder, call this front end, and also the one for the backend. So we're going to be working in the backend for all the Django stuff, and we're going to be working on the front end for all the Next.js stuff. So I'm going to open the whole folder, the one that's containing all these projects, in VS Code. So I'm going to be using VS Code as a text editor for the project. I recommend you use VS Code, but if you're already familiar with another text editor or IDE and you know how to navigate your way around it, then be sure to stick with that. But if you get problems with the environment, you can switch to VS Code, and it's pretty simple to use it. So I'm going to open this in VS Code. So on Windows, once you install VS Code, you're going to have the open with VS Code added to your menu when you right click. And this is what I'm going to click. So that's going to go ahead and open up in VS Code. It should open up here. So here we go. All right. So VS Code comes with an integrated terminal. So we're going to pull that one up because we're going to need to run some commands to install some things. Okay, so I'm going to cd into the backend. So we will start working with Django right away. And here, what we want is we want to create a virtual environment inside the backend. So to create a virtual environment, you're going to be using the virtual env module. So you should be able to get that by typing in pip install virtual env. So that's going to go ahead and make sure we have it. So on Mac or Linux, if you have Python 2 still installed, you might have to run this using pip3 install virtual env. And once we have that, we can use virtual env to create our virtual environment where our backend project will live. So here you can see that we are in the backend folder, and I'm going to create a virtual environment by writing virtual env, then the name of the virtual environment. In our case, I'm going to use venv. This is an arbitrary name, so you can call it anything, just something you can remember. So venv, and when I run that, we have a venv folder added to our backend, and in there we can go ahead and now activate it. So to activate it on Windows, I'm going to expand it just so we see what is there. So we have the lib and the script. So the script is what contains what we care about. So we care about the activate script. For us to activate our virtual environment, we want to execute the activate script. So this activate.bat. So what you can do here is we can run the venv, and then we want to run activate. So I'm going to put this slash like this. So I'm going to click enter there. And once we run that, you can see that our virtual environment is now activated, and we can tell that by looking at the name here. You'll notice that when we create a virtual environment, we get pip installed, we get pip setup for us, and Python setup. So if you're on Mac or Linux, then you don't want to run that, but you want to run source, then the name of the virtual environment. You don't have the scripts folder, but you have bin, and then there is activate. So I'm going to leave the command on the screen. So now, assuming we have the virtual environment set up, we can go ahead and install Django and create a Django backend. So let's install Django by using pip. So pip install Django. I'm also going to get the Django REST framework just because we are already here. So let's get the Django REST framework. And by the way, if you're new to the Django REST framework, this is a very powerful Python module that we use to build REST APIs for Django. So it's like an add-on to Django that makes you make any kind of REST API. So let's go ahead and get Django REST framework. Also on the Django REST framework site, they recommend you get Markdown and Django filter. So Django REST framework comes with the browsable API, and for it to work well, we need to have Markdown installed. For Django filters, this can be used if you want to have filtering or searching. So let's also bring it in. We might use it, I'm not sure, but we'll find out. So let's go ahead and install this. Okay, so now that the installation is done, we can now create our Django project. So whenever we install Django, we get access to the tool called Django admin, and that can enable us to bootstrap the Django project. So let's run Django admin. So Django-admin. We want to run start project like this. So then we give it the project name. So in this case, I'm going to call the project CM backend, since it's going to be the backend. And then I'm going to want it to create all the boilerplate files just inside the backend folder. So I don't want it to create another extra folder. So I'm going to put a dot at the end, and then I'm going to run that. And by the way, we need to change how we are naming it, so it shouldn't have these special characters. So let's run that. And once we run that and we go back to our backend, you can see that now we have manage.py, and also we have our main project files. So let's start our Django server now by running Python manage.py run server. Alright, so once we run that, you're going to quickly see that our server has started. So let me open it up in Chrome, which is pretty cool. It actually opened in another browser. Anyway, so now that we have Django, we are going to focus on just putting off all the Django functionalities we need. But first we need to add REST framework to our installed app section. So I'm going to copy this from the documentation. And in settings.py, we want to make sure we add it. And that's how Django knows about all its functionalities. So right here, after we include all the prior Django apps, we add REST framework. For now, our application is going to be pretty simple. We are going to have only one app that's going to be managing the campaigns. So here, I'm going to stop the server and we create an app. So I'll do Ctrl+C. So we want to run Python manage.py start app, and then the name of the app. So for this one, I'm going to call it campaigns. And once we run that, then we get the campaigns app created. It has all the Django app files. So inside the campaigns, we are going to start by working in the models. So we'll have two models. One of those models is going to be managing the campaigns themselves. So if maybe you have a conference coming up, that's going to be a campaign. And also we are going to have another model that's going to manage the subscribers, and those would be the people who opt in for updates about specific campaigns. So let's create a model for our campaigns. So class campaign. So with Python, we want to make sure that our class names are singular and they start with a capital letter. So we want to import from models.model because that's how we get the Django model stuff. Okay, so here we're going to now describe the fields that we're going to need on our model. Each campaign is going to have a title, a slug, a description, and the created at and updated at fields, and also a logo. So let's start by setting up the title, and we are not using translations. This underscore that you saw autocomplete, you can use it if you want to translate the messages, but we are not going to be doing that. Let's keep things simple, and we only set the max length. So max length for the title, our titles can actually be big, so let's set it to 200, and let's also have a description. So the description is going to be a text field, so that way we don't have a specific limit on the description that a campaign can have. Another thing we're going to have is the slug. So this is going to be a human readable unique identifier of our campaign. Now there is a slug field built into Django, so models slug field, and since it's going to be created from the titles, that means that its max length is going to be slightly above this. So we'll be like replacing spaces with dashes. So let's make it like 255. All right. So now that we have our slug, let's go ahead and also have created at and updated at fields. So for the created at, we need auto now add to be true. So whenever we create a new campaign, this should be inserted automatically using the current time on our server. So this is going to be created at And also let's have updated at. Whenever we update it, we are going to set the updated at to the current time on our server when it gets updated. So in addition, we set auto now add to true, and on update, then we set auto now to true. So that's going to do it for our normal fields. Now our other field is going to be managing our logo, which we are going to be saving in Cloudinary. So Cloudinary already has a model field that it ships with, and whenever we use that, we can pretty much get all the upload functionality directly from the Django admin. So I'm gonna go here just so I can show you the module for Cloudinary if you need to do future references. So in Cloudinary, we need to set up an account, and then we can get credentials to access our account from our applications. Actually, I'm just gonna log in with my existing account. Don't worry. So I'm just gonna log in here with my existing account. So whenever you log in, you're gonna have your credentials here. So you guys can see these credentials here. And here, this is the Python SDK I was talking about. So you can quickly see that they don't only allow storage, but they also allow transformations. You can at runtime request like different variations of an image, and the Cloudinary APIs would go ahead and work on that for you. Right here, we have an example of how to upload from Python using the Cloudinary module, which we're going to install. But we won't be doing it like this. Like I said, since we are going to be uploading from the Django admin, the model we set up will allow everything to work out of the box. So I'm going to go to our terminal, and we're going to install Cloudinary. So pip install Cloudinary like this. And when we have Cloudinary in our project, we need to configure it. So we need to set up Cloudinary settings. So the settings are going to be like this cloud name of ours, and also the API keys and the API secret. So when you sign up, you're going to have this. Now to set Cloudinary up, once we install it, you can see it installed. You want to go to our settings.py. So in our CM backend, we want to go to settings, and up here we need to import Cloudinary. All right. And anywhere in settings, so I'm just gonna go even just after we import it, then you can say Cloudinary, then we want to call config. So config, and you want to pass the cloud name, the API key, and then the API secret. So the values for this will be what you have here. So you have the cloud name, the API key, and then the API secret. You can toggle this. You can reveal to see what the secret is, or you can click the copy to clipboard, and then make sure these, so the cloud name, API key, and the secret, you can use those here. Okay. So one thing that you will probably notice up front is that this is very crucial information. In fact, even in Cloudinary, they don't even show it to people that are around you, especially the API key. So you don't really want to expose this to your version control if you push it to GitHub or Git. So what you want to do is you want to use environment variables to get this. So inside our backend, I'm going to create a .env. So .env, and I'm also going to create a .env sample file, and I'm going to talk about this in a minute. This is going to contain all your secrets that you don't want to push to version control. Now, whenever you're pulling some things from your own environment and someone is trying to run this application, maybe they clone it from Git and they are trying to run it, the application is not going to run, because the application will be depending on these environment configs that will not be in the code. So what we always want to do is we want to set up a sample file where we can dictate the things they are going to need to set up for their project to work well. That's why you see this. Now I'm going to set the secret. So here, let's set this inside the environment. So I'm going to copy this, and here, so when you define a .env that's going to run in Linux, you can define your variables as by prefixing them with the export keyword. So you want to make them constants. So let's do cloud name, or let's also have cloud API key. So, and also let's have the API secret exported to. And why you want to prefix everything with cloud is because in your regular application you might have other API secrets. So you can just prefix this to differentiate them from your other API keys that may have a similar name. So let's go ahead and save this. Make sure whenever you do this, you insert your correct values that you get from the dashboard in Cloudinary. And once you have everything set up, then inside then inside settings.py, now we can use the OS module to get access to those environment variables. So I'm going to import OS, and down here what we want to do is we want to do os.environ, want to do .get, then the keys. So the key for the cloud name is cloud name, very creative. So I'm gonna get this. Let's also do the same thing for the API key and also the API secret. So in .env, just copy the keys, make sure they are matching. Copy the secret, make sure it's matching. So once we have this, then we need to update our terminal to know about our environment file. So for example, if we went and printed this, so I'm gonna copy and print up here. So I can do print, then I'll just do this. So that's what we wanna print. So at the end, I'm going to try to print the cloud name. So let me set it to some values, just so we can see what's going on. So now if we try to run back our application, so I'm gonna do run server, and notice that it's none, and it actually tries to get it twice. So if it doesn't get it first time, it retries. So what we want is to make sure that we can pick it. So we can pick a D here. So for us to be able to make it work, so if you're on Linux or Mac, you can use the source keyword and then you type .env like this. And then that's going to be able to work. But notice when I run it on Windows, so if I type it in Windows, you can see that it doesn't really understand it. So what we want is in Windows, we can't really use export, but rather we use set. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to duplicate this file and I'm going to rename this to be env.bat. So BAT is an executable file that we can execute it with the contents from the terminal, from the command line. So instead of us using export, then we are going to be using set instead. So this is what works on Windows. So we can do set. And you can see VS Code actually understands the syntax. So now that we have that, then what we can do is we need to bring it in, just like on Mac you would do source something. But here what you can do is you're going to use the keyword call, and then you call env.bat like this. So when we run that, you can see that we didn't get any error. And what we can do now is run back our server. And now when it comes back, you can see that now we have the environment variables being read here, which is pretty cool. So now that we are done reading from our virtual environment on both Windows and Linux, and by the way guys, if you guys get any specific issues relating to this, feel free to ask in the comments. I'm sure people are going to help you out. So whenever we do this, what you want is you want to update your .env sample. So you can come over here and make sure that someone is going to need to have this. So here, this is just an example file. So we just need to make it able for someone to quickly tell what we need here. But we can expand more on this from the a README, just so people get to know what exactly they need to do. But for now, this is gonna do. So let's have just some placeholders here and here. Okay. So now what you can do is in our model.py, so models.py, then we can set up the logo or the image. So the logo, it's gonna be a Cloudinary field. So when we install Cloudinary, we need to import it. So we can do from Cloudinary.models import. So we wanna import Cloudinary field. So when we have Cloudinary field, that's what we wanna set for the logo. So over here we can set up some configurations. So we can have a name, then we can have other configs. So the configs I'm gonna pass in is overwrite. So overwrite equals true. So overwrite true means that whenever we had uploaded, let's say, a similar file with the same path, and we are now trying to upload a file with a similar path, then we should go ahead and replace the previous one. But we can also set the formats like JPEG, because JPGs are actually more lightweight, so we can be transforming every image we upload to a JPEG. But feel free to examine the documentation. I know sometimes it can be very daunting to read this documentation, but this is gonna be your friend, because on our side we are only covering like a very small fraction of what Cloudinary does. Now that we have our model field set up, then we can set up the class meta. So let's have class meta, and in the class meta we can specify how we want our model to behave. So we're going to specify an ordering. So the ordering, and we want to order the dates. We want to order by the create date, but in descending order. So we can say created date, but then in descending order, so we want to put a minus at the start. So the items that are created later are the ones that are going to be shown first when we do the first query. And this is also very useful if you want to like add pagination. So let's also set the .str. So this is used in the Django admin, and we'll get there. We'll actually expand on this and improve what we see in the Django admin. So let's just return the title here. Okay, so another thing we are going to have to specify is, notice how we have the slug field, and the slug field is not provided by the user, but rather it's created from the title. So what we want is, we want to override the model save method. So whenever we are creating the campaign, we want to create a method that generates the slug depending on the title that is going to be saved at that point in time. So down here we are going to override save. So def save. So every model you create implements this method. Now we can override it, which means that we can customize how it behaves when it is being executed. So it takes in self args and quags. Is we want to create the slug depending on the title. So I'm just going to create the simple variables here step by step so we can see what's going on. So I'm going to say to assign, then we want to slugify. We want first slugify. So in Django, so we have a function called slugify, and we're going to import it in a minute. So we're going to slugify the title that's being saved at this point in time. So if a user was specifying a title like the story of my startup, it's going to replace all the spaces in that with minus signs and also transform everything to lowercase. So that's what it does behind the scenes. So let's import it actually. Let's go here, import slugify, and this should be template. So from Django template, default filters, import slugify, and then we can use slugify here. I wonder why my quags is complaining. We're going to find out about that. Now that we've created our slug from the title, so one thing you should notice is on our front end, we use the slugs to make the query to the server. So the slugs have to be unique. So in this case, the title doesn't have to be unique, but the slug has to be unique. What we need to do is we need to make sure, we need to first check if the slug we just got already exists in the DB, and then if it already exists, then we are going to try to regenerate it using another function. So here we can check if campaign, wanna call objects, wanna filter by the slug. So wanna say if the slug equals the one to want to assign, we can check exists actually. So dot exists. So if it exists, the logic we are going to use here is we are going to be appending at the end the number of the items in the DB, because we are sure that the number of items in the DB will always increment once we add one. So now we can query for the number of items and then we append maybe a number at the end, and that's going to make it unique. So to do that, we want to reassign to assign. So now to assign will be to assign, and then we want to add there the count of our objects in the DB. So I'm actually going to get this plus, so that returns our query is going to return a number, so we want to transform that into a string, and we are going to just query by for all. We are going to query for all right, and then we want to add a count at the end, so dot count. So that means that if we had like 50, then our slug is going to be something like my event 50, my event 51, if the titles are the same. So now that we have the slug, we can set it to the value of our slug on the model instance, and then we can let the Django continue to handle the save. So what we can do here is we can do self.slug equals the to assign, and we are saying equals, for you're putting dash. Okay, so now that we have set the value of the slug, then we can let Django to continue and handle the save. So we can just send it back to the superclass. In this case, it's a Django model. Okay. So now that we are done with assigning this, then let's go ahead and create the model for our subscriptions. So whenever someone opts in to be notified about these campaigns, So basically what that happens is, let's say it's an event and an event has tickets coming up. If there are some discounts running, those can be notified to the subscribers. So for us to do something like that, we need to have the subscribers or people who opted in. So here, let's have another class to handle the subscriptions. So class subscriber. Remember, there's no objections to how we name the classes, the model classes. So it has to be a valid Python class name. So models, then we want to call .model. So we are going to associate each subscriber to a campaign. So we're going to set up the foreign key. So let's have the campaign already. So campaign equals models foreign key 2 equals campaign. And if the parent campaign is deleted, we also want to delete out the subscribers for that campaign. So if for some reason this is something we may not want, so if we wanted it to work in a way that whenever a campaign got deleted, we should keep the subscribers maybe for the related events, then you can run models.do nothing. So do nothing. There's also set null that just nullifies all the records for the corresponding one that was deleted, but usually that's not what you want to do. You maybe want to keep them or remove them. Let's also take the user's email. So email equals models.email field. Then you can also have created that, updated that. So let's get this. I'm actually going to take the class method too. Let's have the created that, updated that. If we ever need those, usually we will. Let's have the ordering. Let's also have this. Let's also have the toString, just label the user's email. So if you don't customize how the Django admin looks, so the value in the toString of this model is the one that is used as like the identifier, the human readable identifier in the Django admin. But we'll get there, so we'll see how that works. So now that we have our model set up, now we can create our migrations and run them. So down here, and basically what that means is we want to prepare our DB to now start to accept connections and work. So what we have here is an SQLite that Django ships with, that Python ships with, and Django uses that at the start. So that's what we want to work with. Now, whenever we are deploying this, of course, we will have to change it to Postgres. So sure, this is just going to be useful in development. So here, let's run our migrations. So Python manage.py make migrations. So if we run that, you can see, oh, so one thing you'll notice is nothing green. That's because whenever we create an app, we need to add it in our installed apps in the settings.py section. So what we want is we want to go to apps.py, and then we have the name. So this is what we want to copy, and then in the main project folder settings, we want to go to installed apps and also add all our installed apps there. So that allows Django to know where to collect things like migrations from. So let's rerun again. So when we run again, you can see we have an error. Somehow I thought there was something wrong here. I couldn't really tell, but the thing is, ags is a star, is just one star. So let's correct that. So now models.py save. Okay, looks good. So let's run again. Then we don't have models from django.db.models. How are we importing this? This should be models.slug field. Okay. You guys already noticed this stuff, I believe. So when we run, you can see that our models get created. So now if we migrate this, and now that we have all our database tables created, we can go ahead and start to make our API endpoints. So we don't need many, we only need one that's going to be retrieving all our campaign list. And that one is going to be, of course, used by the front end, the Next.js front end, because the Next.js front end will need to display a list in HTML. And also we're going to have an endpoint that retrieves one, just so when they go to the detail page, they make a request to get more details about that specific campaign that the user will be viewing. And also we are going to have an endpoint that can allow the front end to subscribe a user to a campaign. So we're going to go to our views.py. So views.py in our models app. I always prefer to use the Django generic views. They give us a very clean API, and we just need to in our code implement specific things. Let's say if we wanted to implement pagination, we only need to add like a pagination class property to our class. If we wanted to like handle permissions, authentication for that very view, it's just a matter of adding one line of code and things work. And that's why I always prefer them. Makes you write less code and keeps your code elegant. And something maybe I can say is whenever you add code to the code base, usually what happens for us as developers is whenever we add code to a code base, we don't think about the cost of maintaining that code. So whenever you have code, just remember you have to maintain it. So the less code you have, the less bugs you have, the better your life will be. Anyway, so here, let's go ahead and import generics. So from REST framework. So let's first work on the endpoint that's gonna be retrieving all our campaigns. So class campaign list API view. This one is going to be, since we want to show a list, then we're going to be inheriting from list view. So we're going to inherit from generics.list API view. And here we want to specify the serializer class and also the get query set. So let's first implement the get query set. So def. So this is a function that is used to query for the records that are going to be returned in this list and passed to the serializer. So you need to implement this, and here for the return, what you want is you want to return a query set. So a query set is a set of records. It's not a query, but it's a results of a query. So you want to make sure you make a query here and you return the results back to the class. So we need to import our model. So from .models, I'm just going to use relative imports here. Let's import, we need to import campaign. So here we want to query all of them. So campaign objects all, and that's it. So the next thing we're going to need to do is set the serializer. Whenever you're working with REST framework, the serializers are everything. What do I mean by everything? So serializers are used to validate incoming input from the user and to also to specify outputs for the different responses for the user. So it's very important you really understand what serializer fields are available, just so you can create clean serializers. So if I can show you here, if I go to API guide, serializers, specifically serializer fields, you're gonna see all these fields. So these fields have built-in validations, they like built-in transformations on how responses should be. So you wanna take time to, whenever you're working on a project, come here and see, okay, what could I use for this specific field? So something I felt I would mention, I was thinking about this, and I think when I get time, I might make specific videos just to illustrate how this can be used, like shorts or something like that. But it's a very important concept. Serializers are very important concepts. So you want to make sure you invest time to learn about them. So going back to here, let's create our serializer for the campaign. So class campaign serializer. We're going to inherit from serializers. Let's import serializers from Django REST framework. So then we want to inherit from serializers.model serializer. And you might be asking, why am I inheriting from model serializer? Why not just import from serializers.serializer? So that's because when you look at our model, the model specifies criteria on what we need. So we need maybe this to not exceed this. So the model already enforces specific validations. So right now, if we wanted to only rely on the validations from the model, then what we can do is, instead of us specifying the serializer fields, we can just rely on the model one. So whenever you specify that you want to use a model serializer, you want to provide a class meta to specify which fields you want included in your responses and checked on requests. So we want to specify a model. So the model is going to be the campaign and also the fields. So the fields, if we want to only expose title, description, and maybe the slug, and not send this, we would only create a list and we specify this. But at this point, we don't really have anything we don't want to send back. So we can specify that be sure to send us everything. Okay, so under all, we'll make sure all the fields are included, so we don't have to type them one by one. So let's import the model. So from .models, import the campaign. And once we have that, we have the class meta. Let's also have the serializer for the subscriptions, because for that, we need to make sure the emails are validated and all that stuff. So it's going to be a model serializer. Now this is going to be a subscriber model. So subscriber, then we can base on that right here. And if we take a look at our models, then you will notice that for the subscriber, we only have the campaign and then the email, and these ones are auto created, so they have default values. So we also don't have to worry about specifying different fields. So now that we have our serializers set up, then we can import our serializer in our views. So from .serializers, import subscriber and also the campaign subscriber serializer. We need to rename this, I believe. Oh, it should be subscriber serializer. So this should be subscriber serializer, and this is what we want to import in the views. So import subscriber serializer, and also we want to import the campaign serializer. So once we import those, we want to specify serializer class as a class property. So serializer underscore class. So we set that one to our serializer that's going to handle serializations for this view. So this is going to be serializer. So I'm going to save this. And that's pretty much it. We don't have to handle any authentication. We don't have to handle pagination. What we can do now is we need to set up our URLs, URL patterns, and then hook up the routing for our app with our routing for the main application. So let's go ahead and set up our urls.py. So urls.py, and we want to import path. So from Django URLs, then what we want to do is we want to set URL patterns, and then we specify path. We want to say that every time the user goes to /campaigns on our API, then we can instruct Django to handle that using our campaign list API view. So in the urls.py, we specify the path. So path, we want to say if someone goes to campaigns, then we want to handle that using the view. So let's import views. So from .views, import, we need campaign list API view. So since it's a class-based view, we want to do as view. So as view, then we can set a name. This name can give us an easy way to get the details of the URL without having to know the URL. So you will see what I'm talking about, but I'm going to give it the name of campaigns. So whenever we are testing, we are going to be using the reverse utility to know more about the URL without having to go to /campaigns /anything. So now that we have our URL patterns, for now we have one, we're going to be adding more here. We need to hook this one up with our main application routing. So we can go to our main urls.py here. And right now we only have the admin. We also want to have another path. So for this one, we're going to say every time you go to /API, we are going to be sending you to other apps. So for now, let's import include. So include allows us to combine URL patterns. So what we can do is here we can have include, and inside there, then we can specify the path to the URLs. So just the way we specified the app name in settings.py, you can see that we set it up as campaigns. So whatever you have here, sometimes you may have a path or an import like backend.campaigns. So to include the URLs in that app, we put the name which should match in the settings, then .urls. And we have an issue importing subscriber serializer in the views, I believe. So we need to save this. And now, once we run back the application, you can see that it's running. So I'm going to click there. The page has changed, and now we can see some other URLs added here. So I'm going to go to /API /campaigns, since that's the path we specified in our app. Now when we come here, you can see that we have no campaigns now. And so I'm going to create a super user since we have already set up our models. So I'm going to stop our server real quick and run manage.py create super user. So Python manage.py create super user. So we can specify the username and the email, then the password can be anything. So let's run back our server. And now if we went back to our application, so if we went to localhost port 8000, so I want to go to /admin, we can go to the Django admin, and then I'm going to log in as the user I just created in the terminal. So that user was Chris, I believe. Hopefully I remember the password. You can see that we don't have our model added here. So what we want to do is we want to go to our app. So whenever we have an app, we have the admin.py file, and we need to register the model here. So we want to do from models, import. So when I import the campaign, let's also import the subscriber because we also are gonna need to register them. So here what you can do is we can use admin.site.register. Then we want to register them one by one. Let's start with the campaign one. Then let's also register the subscribers. So subscriber. Alright, so once we have that and save and come back to the site, I'm going to refresh. Okay, so here if I click on campaigns, you can see that there's nothing. So we're going to try to add a campaign. So when I click add, you can see that we need to add a title. So for the title, let's say the mega market conf. Okay, so for the description, this can be anything. I'm just going to pick a random picture. So notice how the slug required us to enter it and it didn't allow us to save, so the save method gets caught. So what you can do is we can tell Django to not accept this at request time. So what you can do here on the slug field, we can say, okay, that's the max length, but it can be blank, but it can be null. So null equals true and blank equals true. So if you're confused about these properties, so for null means that we can pretty much not set a value at all, and blank means that we can set the value that is empty, like an empty value, something like an empty string. So that's the blank one. The null is just you don't set it at all. So that's how it works. Now whenever we change the models, we need to update our migrations. So let's do that. So make migrations, migrate, then migrate. So let's run back the server. So I'm gonna try again. So I'm gonna click and then click save. So here we did cloudinary.config and then we passed the cloud name. So notice how we said cloud name. So it should be cloud name. Okay, so let's save that and try again. So we're gonna need to retry this. So let's say the mega conf, then description can be anything. So I'm gonna save now. When we save, you can see that this was now created and we have our event here, and right here you can see we also have the file that was set. Notice how it has this name here. So if I open this in a new tab, you can see that it points to Cloudinary. So all Cloudinary resources are prefixed with this, and then down here we have like other things and the name at the end. And you can see that it was transformed to a JPEG because we set the transformations on our model. So that's how that works. And now if you go to our API endpoint, so if you go to /API/campaigns, we got the list. You should be able to see that we have one item and the slug was automatically generated. So let's go ahead and now add an endpoint that can retrieve one of these that the details will use. It's pretty much going to look like, the object's going to look like this because there's not really much. But oftentimes you want to send the little amount of information, especially on the list endpoints. So the detail endpoint is always going to be needed. But for now, this is okay. We don't really have a lot of properties. But let's also have the details endpoint. So we're gonna go to the views, and also we need to have the details. So to create the details endpoint, we're gonna have a class-based view also. So we can call this campaign detail. So campaign detail inherits from generics. So there is one called a retrieve API view, and that can be used for the details. But also I want to talk about the generic API view. So let's just get generic. So guys, whenever you find that what you wanna do does not easily fit the case, like you're not really, maybe you may not be sure about which one to use, and you want to implement the HTTP method yourself. So let's say you want to implement the put, the patch, or the put, the patch, the get, the post, and you don't want to use this. So like that would be like re-implementing them. But if you want to take that route, then you want to inherit from generic API views, and then you can handle any kind of method here. So since it's generic, then it can handle anything. So you can handle put, patch, you can handle, I guess it's called post and get. So all those. So in our case, let's use this to handle the get. So when we are trying to get one, so get will be taking in self request, and then the slug. So we're gonna be, since our slugs are gonna be unique and the front end is gonna be sending the slug, since that will be what the front end will be using. So in here, what we want to do is we want to query for the item with this slug. We can say query set. Let's set that one to campaign objects filter. Then we want to filter by the one with this slug. So what you can do here is you can do campaign objects filter. So we want to filter by the slug. So this where the slug equals to this slug. So the reason why I'm using the filter is because it doesn't throw an error. So we can do fast on it. So it's always going to return 1, and we can handle the case where this didn't match, like the front end didn't send something that matched in our DB. So we can say if we have the query set, then we want to return that data to the user. So we can say return. So now we're going to be handling responses ourselves, and that's the drawback why you don't want to use generic API views but use like retrieve API view in this case. So you guys can try retrieve API view to implement the same thing. So let's import responses. So whenever we want to send a response to the front end, we have a response class that you can call on this response. So if we have that query set, so if we matched, then we can return response. Then we can send back JSON. Now we are going to have to serialize the query set because this is a Python object. This is a model object, so we want to serialize it to JSON and send it back. So we can pass it to our serializer. So I'm going to set the serializer class even on the detail view. Allow me to change this to API view. So what we can do is, so to use this serializer to serialize this object, you can just pass it by calling the serializer class. So by the way, serif.serializer class is equivalent to you just calling this. Okay, so we're just referring to it just to keep things a bit more organized. So serializer class then takes in the instance it's gonna serialize. So by default, whenever you pass something there, it's expected to be one instance, which in our case should be one instance. So query set. So if you want to serialize more than this, in any case, you want to pass another option for many equals true. So if you're serializing more than one instance, you want to pass many equals true, but in our case it's 1, and then we want to call .data in it. So the serializer of course has different fields, but the .data is the one that gives you the serialized version of what you passed in here. Okay. So now that we have that response, we can handle a case where we didn't find it. So if we don't have it, we can just return a 404. So we can just say response. We have statuses from REST framework. So let's go ahead and import them. Okay, so down here, we can just return HTTP 404 not found. And we need to add this in our URLs. So I'm gonna copy, duplicate this. Let's also import the detail. So that's what we want to use for the second one. Let's keep a comma, and this one is going to be handling the campaign, not campaigns. So here we are going to be handling when a user goes to the campaign / the slug. So we can specify it here. So we need to have a slash here, and now if we come back and refresh, you can see that it gets the 1, and now we have only the object and not the array, we only have one object and not the array. So that's it. If we put something that doesn't exist, we should get the 404. Let's see. You can see we get the not found, meaning that those two are working. So the last endpoint you're going to need to work on now is going to be the endpoint to allow a user to subscribe to a campaign. Okay, so let's go to our views, and in our views, we need to set up another class-based view that will handle the creation of a new subscriber to come to a campaign. So what we want is to set up a class. So I'm going to call it subscribe API view, subscribe to campaign. Hey, what a long name, API view. And then we want to inherit from, so this one we're going to use the generics create API view, and yeah, just easier to work with. So generics dot create API view. So that one is used to handle, it knows that you're gonna need to create, so it goes ahead to handle the post for us. So the things we did here handling the get, for it, it's gonna do whatever needs to be done to handle the post. So it's gonna be create API view. What we need to do is handle the get query set. So whenever we create, it needs to use the get query set to know which one to send back. So here we can actually say like subscriber objects with latest. That's gonna send the last one we added. But using latest actually needs us to update our model. So right now I'm just gonna get all of them because, like I said, it doesn't really matter so much. So let's import subscriber from the model. So also we need to specify the serializer class. So that's used to serialize the incoming request to make sure the email and the campaign exists in the request. Let's have serializer underscore class, and we can set that one to our subscriber serializer class. So that's gonna be this. So Control A, then let's have it here. Okay, so now that we are done setting up our API view, then we can also add it to our URLs. So here we can have campaigns subscribe. So let's have subscribe. Let's also import our view. So subscribe API view. That's the one we want to use here. Let's say subscribe here. So for us to test out our subscribe, I'm going to copy our URL. So, and then I'm going to open up Postman. So Postman is a tool that allows us to test API endpoints. So since we're going to be making a post request, we're going to come here and we say we want to go to, let's see, localhost port 8000/API. So I'm going to copy that, bring it here. Alright, slash. We want to make a post request. So we want to go to the body and we want to specify the data we want to send. So we need the email and also the campaign. So those are the required fields from the model. So let's set an email, and now let's say email at app.com. So let's also set the campaign. So the campaign, since it's a foreign key, then we need to use its ID. So at this point in time, we already have created one. So that means that the ID that was assigned is one. That's what we want to use. So let's send here. You can see post not allowed. So let's take a look at what's going on. So what's happening is the subscribe is being passed as this slug. So what's happening, our request is being handled on this point. So when we send the request, it is only handled up to here because now the slug here is looked at as the subscribe one. So what you can do in this case is move this one down, or we could use a completely different one here. We could use a completely different URL here. So I'm going to do subscribers, and I'm just going to remove campaigns from the start. So that means that now the request we are going to make is going to go to /subscribers, and it's going to be a post request, and we are sending the campaign and the email. So I'm going to send this, and notice that we get one created here. And now if you go to our Django admin, so I'm going to go to the Django admin. So that's found at /admin. So once we get in and go to the subscribers list, you can see that we have one subscriber, and when we click on them, you can see which campaign they subscribe to. So that's it. In the next one, I'm going to be showing you other things we can do in the backend. Hopefully we'll finish the backend in the next one. So thanks guys for watching, and I'll talk to you in the next video.